What would you do if your stepfather stole your dead mother's college fund to pay for his son's baseball dreams? I remember the exact moment my world fell apart. I was sitting at the kitchen table on a Tuesday afternoon in March, still wearing my school hoodie with the engineering club logo, when I opened the letter from the financial aid office at Northwestern. The thick envelope had arrived 3 days earlier and I had been too nervous to open it, carrying it around in my backpack like some kind of talisman. My hands were shaking as I unfolded the pages, my eyes scanning for the number that would determine my entire future. Total financial aid package, $42,000. Estimated cost of attendance, $78,000. Expected family contribution, $36,000 per year. My heart stopped. $36,000 per year. That was more than $144,000 over 4 years. My college fund had $89,000 in it, money my mom had carefully saved before she died. Even with my part-time job at the library and the small scholarships I had won, there was no way the math worked unless I took out massive loans. But wait, I thought, maybe I was calculating wrong. Maybe the cost of attendance included things I would not actually need to pay. I pulled out my phone and started frantically searching for Northwestern's actual tuition breakdown. That was when Damien walked into the kitchen. My stepfather had been living with us for 4 years now, ever since he married my dad 2 years after Mom died. He was tall and broad-shouldered with graying hair at his temples and the kind of smile that never quite reached his eyes. He always wore business casual clothes even on weekends, like he was constantly ready for some important meeting that never actually happened. He looked at the papers spread across the table and his smile got wider. "Congratulations, Hazel," he said. "Northwestern is a great school. Your mom would be proud." The mention of my mom made my throat tight, but I pushed past it. "I need to talk to Dad about the college fund," I said. "The numbers are not adding up the way I thought they would. When is he getting home from work?" Damien pulled out a chair and sat down across from me, folding his hands on the table. "Your father is going to be late tonight, big project deadline. But I can help you with this. I have been managing the family finances for a while now, so I know exactly what we are working with." Something in his tone made my stomach drop, but I could not quite identify why. "Okay," I said slowly. "So the college fund Mom set up, that is still at $89,000, right?" I have not touched it, obviously, and I know Dad would not have either. Damien was quiet for a long moment. Then he leaned back in his chair and sighed like I had just asked him to explain something very complicated to a small child. "Hazel, we need to have a conversation about what family means. When your father and I got married, we became a family. That means all our resources are shared. The money in that account, it is not just your money anymore. It is family money." My pulse started racing. "What do you mean it is not my money?" "Mom set that up specifically for my college education. She started saving for it when I was born. And that was very generous of her," Damien said. "But circumstances change. Your father was barely functioning after your mother passed, you remember that. He could barely get out of bed, could not manage the bills, was not eating. I stepped in and took over the household finances because someone needed to. And I've made sure this family stayed afloat. I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience." "Where is the money, Damien?" "It has been reinvested into the family," he said smoothly. "Braden needed opportunities. Elite-level baseball training does not come cheap, and if he is going to have any shot at a college scholarship, he needs the best coaching. We have spent about $65,000 over the past 2 years on his training, travel teams, private lessons, equipment. Plus his private school tuition is $18,000 per year. Those are investments in his future, just like your college fund was meant to be an investment in yours." I could not breathe. "You spent my college fund on Braden's baseball." "I used family money to give both of you kids opportunities," Damien corrected. "And before you get upset, remember that Braden is your brother now. We are all family. Your mother would have wanted you to think about the family as a whole, not just yourself." The audacity of him invoking my mother, the woman he never met, to justify stealing from her daughter, made something break inside me. "She is not here to say what she would have wanted," I said, my voice shaking. "But I know exactly what she wanted because she told me." She told me that education was the most important thing, that this money was for me to go to college without drowning in debt like she did. She worked double shifts at the hospital for years to save this money. Hazel, you are being dramatic, Damien said. There are other options. Community college is perfectly respectable. You can do 2 years there and transfer. Or you can take out loans like millions of other students. This is not the end of the world. My acceptance letter to Northwestern's engineering program was sitting right there on the table. Early decision. One of the top programs in the country. I had worked for 4 years for this, maintaining a 4.2 grade point average, leading the robotics team to state championships, volunteering at the children's hospital where my mom used to work. And now this man was telling me to go to community college because he decided my dead mother's money should pay for his mediocre son to play baseball. Does Dad know? I asked quietly. Does he know you spent the college fund? Your father trusts me to make financial decisions for this household, Damien said. He does not need to be bothered with every little detail. He has enough stress at work. So that is a no, I said. You have been hiding this from him. Damien stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I have been taking care of this family while you have been focused on your own selfish goals. Your father and I are partners. What I decide about our finances is between us. Now I suggest you start looking at more affordable school options because the money is gone and that is final. He walked out of the kitchen and I heard his office door close firmly. I sat there staring at my acceptance letter, at the financial aid breakdown, at the dreams that had just evaporated in the space of a 10-minute conversation. The Northwestern deposit was due in 19 days. April 1st. I had exactly 19 days to figure out how to come up with $36,000 where I would lose my spot. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend Clara asking if I had opened my financial aid letter yet. I could not even begin to explain what had just happened. Instead, I went upstairs to my room, closed the door, and started going through the file box I kept under my bed. It was full of things from my mom. Photos, birthday cards, her hospital ID badge, the program from her funeral. And buried at the bottom, a folder of important documents. Her will. Insurance papers. And a copy of the paperwork for my college fund. I pulled it out with shaking hands. The account had been opened when I was 3 years old. Contributions were listed year by year, sometimes just a few $100s, sometimes a few thousand when she got bonuses or worked overtime. The last contribution was dated 2 months before she died, $1,500, with a note in her handwriting saying for Hazel's bright future. The account named me as the sole beneficiary with my maternal grandmother Evelyn Kim listed as the trustee until I turned 18. Wait. Grandmother Evelyn was listed as trustee. Not my dad. Not Damien. My grandmother. I had not spoken to my grandmother in almost 3 years. After Mom died, Damien had gradually made it more and more difficult for me to see Mom's side of the family. He always had reasons why I could not go visit for holidays. Grandmother Evelyn lived too far away, the drive was too long, Dad needed me at home, Braden had a tournament that weekend and we should support family. Eventually the calls and visits just stopped and I had been too lost in my own grief and too focused on school to fight about it. But now I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found her number. I had no idea if it was still current. My thumb hovered over the call button. It was 7:30 on a Tuesday night. What if she did not want to hear from me? What if she blamed me for letting the relationship fade? What if she could not help? I pressed call before I could talk myself out of it. The phone rang 3 times and then I heard her voice, cautious and hopeful. Hazel. Grandmother, I said, and then I started crying. I had not cried since the day of Mom's funeral, but now I could not stop. Everything poured out. The college acceptance, Damien's confession, the money being gone, the 19-day deadline. She listened without interrupting, and when I finally ran out of words, she was quiet for a long moment. Hazel, honey, she said finally, her voice tight with anger. That money was in a trust. Your mother set it up specifically so it could only be used for your education. I am the trustee. No one should have been able to access that money without my signature. What? I said. What do you mean? Your mother was very careful about this, Grandmother Evelyn said. She had seen too many cases at the hospital where family members took advantage after someone died. She set up an irrevocable trust with me as the trustee and you as the sole beneficiary. The money could only be withdrawn for qualified educational expenses and only with my approval. I still get statements every quarter. The last one I received 2 months ago showed a balance of $88,712. My head was spinning. But Damien said he spent it. He said it was gone. Then either he is lying or he committed fraud, my grandmother said flatly. Hazel, I need you to listen to me carefully. Do not tell Damien or your father that you called me yet. Tomorrow after school, can you get to a printer and scan some documents for me? Yes, at the library where I work. Good. I am going to email you a list of what I need. Bank statements, any financial documents you can find in the house. I am going to call my lawyer first thing in the morning. If Damien accessed that trust fund, he forged my signature and that is embezzlement. But I need proof before we confront anyone. Okay, I whispered. Grandmother, I am sorry I have not called. I should have stayed in touch. Oh honey, she said, her voice softening. I know exactly why you have not called and it is not your fault. I have been trying to reach you and your father for 3 years. Damien always had excuses for why you could not come to the phone. I should have pushed harder. I should have driven down there and demanded to see you. But we are going to fix this now. Your mother trusted me to protect this money for you and I am not going to let some con artist steal your future. We talked for another hour. She told me about her life, about how much she missed Mom, about how proud she was when she heard I had gotten into Northwestern. She told me stories about Mom in college, about how determined she had been to build a better life. By the time we hung up, I felt like I could breathe again. I had an ally. I was not alone in this. The next day at school, I could barely focus. My mind kept spinning through possibilities. What if Damien really had forged documents? What if we could get the money back? What if we could not? What if I had to give up Northwestern anyway? My calculus teacher called on me twice and I had no idea what the question was. After school, I went straight to my shift at the library. My boss let me use the office printer and I spent my break scanning every financial document I could photograph with my phone from that morning. I had snuck into Damien's office before school while he was in the shower. He kept a filing cabinet that was usually locked, but I had seen him open it enough times to figure out where he hid the key, taped under his desk drawer. Inside were folders labeled with account names and dates. I found the one labeled college fund and photographed every page. What I saw made me sick. The account statements showed regular withdrawals starting about 6 months after Damien married my dad. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. The withdrawal slips had a signature that was supposed to be my grandmother's, but even I could tell it was forged. The handwriting was too neat, too careful. My grandmother had arthritis in her hands and her signature had always been a little shaky. These signatures looked like someone had practiced them until they were perfect. There were also copies of checks made out to something called Elite Diamond Baseball Academy. $12,000. Another one to Midwest Showcase tournaments for $8,000. One to Riverside Preparatory School for $18,000. All of this money that was supposed to be mine, spent on Braden's baseball dreams. I scanned everything and emailed it to my grandmother. Then I went back to my shift shelving books and trying not to throw up. My phone buzzed an hour later. A text from Grandmother Evelyn. Got the documents. My lawyer is reviewing now. This is definitely fraud. Do not confront anyone yet. Coming down this weekend to talk to your father in person. That night at dinner, I could barely look at Damien. He sat at the head of the table like always, talking about his day, asking Braden about baseball practice. Braden was 14 and had his father's build but none of his calculated charm. He mostly just grunted responses and scrolled on his phone between bites. My dad looked tired. He always looked tired these days. Nathan Wright had been a different person before Mom died, laughing and energetic in prison. Now he seemed like he was just going through the motions. He worked long hours at his accounting firm and came home drained. Damien had positioned himself as the one who held everything together and Dad seemed grateful to let him. Hazel has been very quiet lately, Damien said, looking at me with a smile that did not reach his eyes. Still stressed about college decisions. I am fine, I said flatly. She just needs to adjust her expectations, Damien continued, speaking to my dad like I was not there. I have been telling her there are plenty of good state schools that are much more affordable. No reason to go into massive debt for an out-of-state private school. My dad looked up from his plate. I thought Northwestern was your dream school, honey. It is, I said. But apparently we cannot afford it. Damien jumped in before I could continue. The financial aid package was not as generous as we hoped. These elite schools expect families to contribute more than is realistic for us. I've been trying to explain to Hazel that community college for 2 years and then transferring is a much smarter financial choice. My dad frowned. What about the college fund? I thought that would cover most of the costs. I held my breath. This was it. This was where Damien would either come clean or lie to my father's face. The college fund has been reallocated, Damien said smoothly. We have had significant family expenses over the past few years. Braden's education and athletics programs have required substantial investment. I made the executive decision to use those funds where they would benefit the entire family rather than sitting in an account earning minimal interest. You spent Hazel's college fund, my dad said slowly, like he was trying to process the words. I used family money for family needs, Damien corrected. And before you get upset, remember that Braden is your son too now. We are a blended family. That means all our children deserve equal opportunities. Hazel can still go to college. She just needs to be more realistic about which college. I watched my dad's face. For a moment I thought I saw anger flash across it, but then it faded into weary acceptance. Damien, you should have discussed this with me first. You were barely functional when I took over the finances, Damien said, his voice gentle but firm. You told me to handle it. So I have been handling it. I have kept this household running, made sure the bills are paid, managed everyone's needs. You have enough to worry about with work. This is what partners do. We take care of things. And just like that, my dad backed down. He looked at me with an expression that might have been apologetic but also helpless. We will figure something out, honey. Maybe you could talk to the financial aid office about more loans. I could not stay at that table another second. I excused myself and went upstairs. Behind me I heard Braden ask if he could be excused too, and then the sound of video game music from the living room. Just another normal evening in the Ray household. The week crawled by. Every day I woke up thinking about that April 1st deadline. 12 days. 11 days. 10 days. I researched student loans until my eyes burned. Even with maximum federal loans, I would need private loans with interest rates that made my stomach turn. I would graduate with over $100,000 in debt. For a degree in engineering that would hopefully lead to a good job, but what if it did not? What if I got sick? What if the job market crashed? I would be paying off these loans into my 40s. On Friday afternoon, my grandmother's car pulled into our driveway. I had not told Dad or Damien she was coming. I met her at the door before anyone else could. She looked older than I remembered, her black hair now mostly gray, but her eyes were sharp and determined. She hugged me tight and I felt some of the tension I had been carrying all week finally ease. Is your father home? She asked. He should be here any minute. Damien is in his office. Good, she said. Let him stay there for now. I want to talk to your father first. Dad pulled in 20 minutes later. His face went through several expressions when he saw Grandmother Evelyn standing in our living room. Surprise, confusion, and then something that might have been guilt. Evelyn, he said. I did not know you were coming. I tried calling you 17 times over the past 3 years, Nathan, she said coolly. Your husband always said you were busy. So I decided to stop calling and start showing up. This is not a great time, my dad started to say, but she cut him off. Sit down, she said. We need to talk about what has been happening in this house. The conversation that followed was brutal. Grandmother Evelyn laid out everything. The trust fund, the forged signatures, the embezzlement. She had brought her lawyer's preliminary findings in a folder that she spread across the coffee table. Copies of the real trust documents. Copies of the fraudulent withdrawal slips. A side-by-side comparison of her real signature versus the forged ones. Bank statements showing exactly where the money had gone. My father's face went white. Then red. Then white again. "Where is Damien?" he said finally. "In his office," I told him. Dad stood up and walked down the hall. I heard him knock once and then open the door without waiting for an answer. Grandmother Evelyn and I followed. Damien was sitting at his desk, looking at his computer. He turned with that practiced smile, but it faltered when he saw all three of us. "Nathan, what is going on?" "Did you forge Evelyn's signature to access Hazel's college fund?" my dad asked. His voice was shaking. "I see Evelyn has been filling your head with stories," Damien said. He stood up and came around the desk. "This is a family matter, Nathan. We can discuss it privately without your dead wife's mother stirring up trouble." "Answer the question," my dad said. Damien's expression hardened. "I made financial decisions that benefited our family. I do not need to justify those decisions to someone who is not even part of this household anymore." "You committed fraud," Grandmother Evelyn said. Her voice was ice. "You forged my signature to steal money from a trust fund. That is a felony." "That money was being wasted sitting in an account," Damien shot back. "Braden needed opportunities. He has real talent, and with the right coaching he could get a full-ride scholarship to a Division I school. I invested in his future. He is barely making the JV team," I said. "Everyone knows the only reason he is on the elite diamond team is because you paid for it." "That is not true," Damien said, but his voice lacked conviction. He turned to my dad. "Nathan, you have to see that I was doing what was best for our family. Hazel can go to any state school she wants. Braden's window for athletic recruitment is closing. I made the choice that gave both kids opportunities." "You stole from my daughter," my dad said quietly. "You forged documents. You lied to me. How long did you think you could hide this?" "I was not hiding anything," Damien insisted. "I was managing our finances like you asked me to. You said you could not handle it after Sarah died. You told me to take care of everything. So I did." "I told you to help with bills," my dad said, his voice rising. "I did not tell you to steal from my daughter's college fund. I did not tell you to forge signatures and commit fraud. Did you really think I would be okay with this?" Damien looked between the three of us and I saw his expression shift. He was realizing he had lost. "You are going to choose her side," he said to my dad. "After everything I have done for you. I held this family together when you were falling apart. I took care of your kid when you could barely function. And now you are going to throw me away because your dead wife's mother shows up with some paperwork." "Get out," my dad said. "What?" "Get out of this house. Now. Pack a bag and leave." Damien laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You cannot kick me out. This is my house too. We are married. I will have divorce papers filed on Monday," my dad said. "And Evelyn's lawyer is pressing criminal charges. You need to leave before I call the police." "What about Braden?" Damien said. "You are going to kick out his father. You are going to destroy this family." "You destroyed this family when you stole from my daughter," my dad said. "Braden can stay here as long as he wants. He is a kid and none of this is his fault. But you are leaving. Now." I watched Damien's face go through several emotions. Anger, disbelief, calculation. Then he grabbed his phone and wallet from the desk and walked out. We heard him going upstairs, heard drawers opening and closing, heard him in the bathroom. Braden came out of his room asking what was happening. Dad told him to go back to his room. They would talk soon. 20 minutes later, Damien came down the stairs with a duffel bag. He stopped in the doorway and looked at my dad. "You are making a mistake," he said. "You are never going to find anyone else willing to put up with your baggage. You will come crawling back." "Get out," my dad repeated. Damien left. We heard his car start and pull out of the driveway. Then there was silence. My dad sat down on the couch and put his head in his hands. "I did not know," he said. "I swear I did not know." He said he was managing things and I just trusted him. I should have been paying attention. I should have protected you. I sat down next to him. "It is not your fault." "It is my fault," he said. "After your mom died, I just checked out. I let Damien take over everything because it was easier than dealing with reality. I have been a terrible father." Grandmother Evelyn sat down on his other side. "Nathan, you were grieving. Damien took advantage of that. He saw an opportunity and he exploited it. But we are going to fix this now." The next few weeks were chaos. Grandmother Evelyn's lawyer filed criminal charges against Damien for forgery and embezzlement. The police came to take my statement. Dad filed for divorce and for an emergency freeze on all joint accounts. We discovered that Damien had been intercepting not just the trust fund statements but also credit card bills and bank statements. He had taken out a second credit card in my dad's name and run up $15,000 in charges, mostly for Braden's baseball expenses. Dad had no idea the card existed. The legal process was slow, but the evidence was overwhelming. Damien had been sloppy, probably because he never thought anyone would question him. The forged signatures were obvious once you looked closely. The paper trail of where the money went was clear. His own computer had searches for how to forge signatures and how to access trust funds. His lawyer tried to argue that Damien had a good faith belief that the money was family money and he was entitled to use it, but the prosecutor tore that argument apart. You cannot have a good faith belief when you are forging signatures and hiding bank statements. While the legal case moved forward, I had to deal with the immediate crisis. The April 1st deposit deadline for Northwestern came and went. I called the admissions office and explained the situation. They were sympathetic but firm. Without the deposit, I would lose my spot. However, they said I could defer my admission for 1 year if I needed time to sort out my finances. It was not ideal, but it was something. Grandmother Evelyn's lawyer managed to get a court order freezing what was left of the trust fund account and tracing where the money had gone. They recovered $72,000. Some of the money Damien had spent was just gone, paid to coaches and schools that would not refund it. But a significant amount had been sitting in a separate account Damien had opened, presumably planning to use it for more of Braden's expenses. The court seized that account and returned the money to the trust. With the recovered funds plus the financial aid package plus some additional grants the financial aid office found for me after I explained the situation, I could afford Northwestern. Barely. I would still need to take out some loans and work part-time, but it was manageable. I accepted the deferral and planned to start the following fall. Braden stayed with us through the end of the school year. It was awkward. He knew what his dad had done, and I think part of him was angry at all of us for tearing apart his family. But another part of him seemed almost relieved. Without Damien's constant pressure, he quit the elite diamond team and joined a recreational league where he actually seemed to have fun. He made friends who liked him for reasons other than his dad's money. He started doing better in school. In June, his mom came and got him to spend the summer with her, and I think he was glad to get away from all the drama. Damien's trial happened in October. He took a plea deal rather than go to trial. 2 years in prison for embezzlement and forgery plus restitution for what could not be recovered. He served 18 months. His relationship with Braden never recovered. Braden told me later that once his dad was out of prison he tried to reconnect, but Braden wanted nothing to do with him. He had figured out that his dad had never actually cared about his baseball talent or his future. Damien had been living through him, trying to create some fantasy of athletic glory that was never real. Braden was just a vehicle for Damien's ego. I started Northwestern the following September. The engineering program was everything I had hoped it would be. Hard, demanding, exciting, terrifying. I loved every minute of it. I called my dad every week and he came to visit twice that first semester. We were slowly rebuilding our relationship. He had started therapy to deal with his grief over mom and his guilt over letting Damien control so much. He sold the house because it had too many bad memories and moved into a smaller place. He seemed lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. Grandmother Evelyn and I had dinner every month. She told me stories about my mom that I had never heard, filled in gaps in my understanding of who my mother had been before she was my mother. She came to my college graduation 4 years later and cried through the whole ceremony. She said my mom would have been so proud. I told her that mom would have been proud of her too, for protecting the gift she had left for me. I think about Damien sometimes, about how he justified everything he did. He convinced himself that he was making smart financial decisions for the family, that he was the hero holding everything together. But really he was just a con artist who saw an opportunity in my dad's grief. He thought he could rewrite the past, make my mom's sacrifice for me into something that benefited his own son. He thought he deserved that money more than I did. But my mom had seen people like Damien at the hospital where she worked. She had seen family members take advantage of patients, steal from estates, manipulate grieving relatives. That is why she had been so careful with the trust fund. She had protected me even after she was gone, made sure that her gift to me could not be stolen. And in the end, her protection held. I graduated with my engineering degree and got a job at a tech company in Chicago. I paid off my student loans in 6 years. I bought a small condo and adopted a rescue dog. I visited my dad regularly and we were close in a way we had not been since before Mom died. Braden and I stayed in touch. He went to community college and then transferred to a state school where he studied business. He never played baseball again. He said he did not even miss it, that it had never really been his dream anyway. Sometimes people ask me if I am angry about what happened, about the year I lost and the stress and the trauma. I tell them I am angry at Damien for what he did, but I am grateful for what I learned. I learned that grief makes people vulnerable and that there are always predators waiting to take advantage of that vulnerability. I learned that you have to pay attention to your own life even when it is hard, that you cannot just hand control to someone else and hope they have your best interests at heart. I learned that my mom loved me enough to protect me even from beyond the grave and that my grandmother loved me enough to fight for me when I needed it most. But mostly I learned that you have to stand up for yourself because no one else will. When Damien told me the money was gone and I should just accept it, I could have given up. I could have believed him that I was being selfish, that family meant sacrificing my dreams for his son's mediocre baseball career. A lot of people in that situation would have just swallowed their anger and tried to make the best of community college. But I did not give up. I called my grandmother. I gathered evidence. I fought back. And because I fought back, I got my future back. I got the education my mom had sacrificed so much to give me. I got the career I had worked so hard for. I got justice. That is what I tell people when they ask me about it. Sometimes you have to fight for what is yours. Sometimes you have to drag the truth into the light even when people want to keep it hidden. Sometimes you have to be willing to blow up your whole life to protect your future. It is scary and it is hard and there are no guarantees. But the alternative is letting people like Damien win. And I was not going to let that happen. Not to me. Not to my mom's memory. Not to the future she had dreamed for me. I keep a photo of my mom on my desk at work. She is wearing her hospital scrubs and laughing at something off camera. She looks young and happy and full of life. Next to it I keep my Northwestern diploma. Sometimes when I am having a hard day I look at both of them and I think about everything she did to make that diploma possible and everything I did to make sure her sacrifice was not stolen from me. And then I get back to work, building the life she wanted me to have, the life I fought to keep. That is my story. That is how I learned that family money is not actually family money when someone builds it with love for one specific person. That is how I learned that grief makes people vulnerable, but it does not make them stupid. That is how I learned that my mom's love was strong enough to protect me even 4 years after her death. And that is how I learned that when someone tries to steal your future, you fight back with everything you have. Because your future is worth fighting for. Always.